Okay, Senator, I think on top of mind for everybody is the Judge Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. What is your thoughts now about what should happen? I know you want everything delayed. Is that realistic?
Oh, absolutely, because what Dr. Ford is asking for is an FBI investigation. That was done with Anita Hill back in 1991. There is absolutely no reason that when you have new information that the vetting process shouldn't be extended to examine that issue. And that's what she's asking for before she comes to testify.
Is there any part of you that thinks too much time has gone by since this allegation, since this alleged event happened?
I think when somebody brings forward an issue that they were attacked in a sexual attack, that is certainly relevant to service as a judge, and certainly relevant to serving on the top level of the Supreme Court. And often, when there is such an allegation, it leads to other people coming forward as well. So that you only find that with an investigation and a little bit of time. She was very courageous in coming forward. It's a very difficult thing to do. She's been attacked on the internet with rumor after rumor after rumor. I've already seen 5 of them that were laid out and then debunked. This is why women are so reluctant to come forward, is the way that they're treated with such a claim.
Does it, I don't know if the word is trouble you, or what do you make of the fact that she's saying she's not going to testify on Monday? Well,
she hasn't closed the door to testifying. She's saying there should be an FBI investigation before she testifies. That was even done in 1991 with Anita Hill. That's a completely reasonable claim or desire. You have on that committee 11 white men in the majority. They do not understand these issues very well. They didn't understand them well in 1991. They don't understand them very well now. But when she comes forward and says, I want to be treated fairly, not just have a box checked, I want to have the issue I've raised checked out, then there's an obligation to check it out.
What do you think is going to happen? What does your crystal ball say?
Boy, I really don't know. I expect before a day or two has passed, there will be another development in the case, and we'll all be paying attention. But I hope, what I hope for is some of the members, some of the white men serving in the majority, stand up and say, we believe that when a woman comes forward, she has to be treated with respect and dignity. She needs to be treated fairly, and certainly a request for an investigation is what any one of us would want in a similar situation, and we will not proceed, we will not support and proceed with the judiciary's work until that request is honored.
Republicans are upset that this came out at the 11th hour.
Well, it came out when the individual involved was willing to have the information released. Are they upset that Dianne Feinstein respected the woman's request for confidentiality? And by the way, I don't think the Republicans' hands are clean on this. They immediately released a statement from over 50 high school friends of Kavanaugh's. And why did they go and obtain all those statements? I'm told it's because they had information about his behavior in high school. We haven't heard the end of that story. So what information did the Republicans hold back? And they're holding back a huge amount of information about the years he served as secretary to President Bush, not letting a single document come to the Senate. They are providing an opportunity for a Republican lawyer who works for, has as clients, key members of the administration, actually decide which documents in other parts of his life the Senate sees. That's executive interference in the work of the Senate. And then they're labeling documents that come committee confidential so the American people can't see them on issues relevant to his viewpoints. This is an entirely rigged system to hide his background. And that's unacceptable.
Let's talk about your future aspirations. There are reports out there that you've hired staff in Iowa and New Hampshire for a presidential run. Is that true?
No, that's not true. I haven't hired staff for a presidential run. I do have a blue wave PAC that is helping Democrats run across the nation, and that is include hiring some staff to help out in those 2 states with Democrats' races.
It seems a little odd that a senator from Oregon would be hiring staff in Iowa and New Hampshire, which of course, that's where people go to run for president if you're not running for president.
Well, I've been very clear that I'm exploring the possibility, that I'm considering the possibility, And so I've been kicking off a lot of canvases, giving a lot of speeches, holding a lot of gatherings on front porches to talk about the future of our country. But I've also been doing that all around this country, helping to provide support for Democrats who are running for the U.S. Senate. It is a narrow path to a Democratic majority in 2018 in the Senate. We would have to win 80% of the Senate races that are up to make that happen. It's a narrow path, but it is still a viable path, and I'm doing all I can to help make that happen.
Nobody has ever been elected president in the West outside of California. People from the West, small states, don't do well when they aspire for national office. What is in your thought process as you think about doing this that makes you think that maybe you're different?
Well, my thought at this point is simply I am very profoundly disturbed by the direction of America. Our We the People nation is being destroyed as we sit here. It's being destroyed by gerrymandering, which the Supreme Court has done nothing about. It's being destroyed by voter suppression, which the courts have opened the door to by tearing down the Voting Rights Act. It's being destroyed by dark money in campaigns, which they opened the door with Citizens United. Our whole vision of our Constitution was to produce laws that reflect the will of the people, as Jefferson put it, or as Lincoln put it, of, by, and for the people. But what we have now is government of, by, and for the powerful. I think that we have in this generation a responsibility to do everything we can to save the soul of our democracy.
Do you think you have the personality to be president? I mean, most people who run for president have this kind of big personality. You're a more thoughtful, quiet person.
Well, thoughtful. Thank you. I haven't made a decision to run. In my life, I've stepped into battles that I believe need to be fought. When you get on the battlefield, you're doing something important, regardless of the outcome. And sometimes, when you get on that battlefield, you discover there is a path of victory. But if you're not there, there is no path.
Let's talk about your appointment to the UN by President Trump. Explain that, and it seems kind of odd.
Well, this was actually quite funny because there are two members of the Senate, Democrat and Republican, go up to represent the Senate each time the General Assembly comes together in its annual big event where heads of state come and secretaries of state come. And so as the ranking Democrat on the relevant subcommittee for international organizations as part of the Foreign Relations Committee, I was asked to do this. And so I had no idea that the White House would put out a press release drawing attention to it, and certainly that they would put out a press release calling it an ambassadorial level appointment. That caught us all off guard, but basically I'm representing the Senate during these important meetings in part of next week.
You are one of the harshest critics of President Trump. Why you? Why did they nominate you?
Well, because this is about the Senate deciding who will go, a Democrat and a Republican. The top Democrat on the key committee, so that's why I'm going to represent the Senate.
Got you.
I'm not there to represent the administration. Just be clear, that's the confusion that people have.
Right, it is confusing because it seems on the one hand you're criticizing the president on a daily basis, and then it seems like he turns around and gives you some sort of accolade.
Yeah, no, I would view it just as it's a little bit of administrative curiosity. It's a tradition to have key members of the Senate be present. So there's a Republican, Ron Johnson, and myself.
Let's go back to, I mean, every day, every week, there's a new issue that seems to be dividing us more and more and more. Is there hope to ever get back to the days where you could have cooperation across the aisle?
Well, we do have a big challenge with the division in the media in America. We have media that primarily resonates with the right and media that primarily resonates with the left. And the stories become very, very different. And just to give you an example, a few months ago I'm listening to a story on one station, and the story is that the Russians have attacked the foundation of our democracy, our elections, and we have to get to the bottom of it and make sure it never happens again. So it was calling for a strong investigation. Then I flipped over to a channel that often reflects views on the far right, and it had a subtitle that said something to the effect of coup against the president. And you see that, and you kind of wake up. Mm-hmm. And I was picturing that a couple dozen people with machine guns had jumped the fence at the White House. And so I turned up the volume, I was riveted to it, and the conversation was this investigation into Russia meddling in our elections. It's an unpatriotic, unconstitutional coup against the president. So there you have the same investigation, on one side being presented as essential to the salvation of our democracy, and on another side being presented as a coup in violation of the Constitution. That's how divided the media is, and therefore what people resonate to. So that's very different than when I first came into debates where we essentially had 3 networks. We had basically the same facts. We had big differences over the Vietnam War, big differences over civil rights, but we had the same basic facts from which to have those discussions. Now we have a president who, when there's very rational concerns and facts put forward, he calls them fake facts. And so the whole foundation for understanding what's going on is very weak in America, and it's not an easy problem to solve.
I always like to ask people in your position, politicians who are on the opposite of whoever's in power, do you have anything good to say about President Trump?
Well, I agree with the president's viewpoint that we cannot keep losing our manufacturing base. We've given full access to our market to countries that operate by very different rules on wages, on broader labor rules, on environmental rules, very low enforcement, and so they can make things at a fraction of the price that we can make them here in America. If you give full access to our marketplace under those circumstances, you destroy American manufacturing. And that has gone on now for decades. And it's gone on largely for geopolitical reasons. We did a lot to favor China to pull them away from Russia. Now we're doing a lot to favor some other nations to help pull them away from China, and that was kind of the TPP discussion. And so I agree with the president on that. I think his strategy is incoherent. It's half-baked. He's throwing stones around the world, and people are throwing stones back at us rather than having a coherent fashion to drive down or eliminate the trade imbalance in manufactured goods. So he may do more harm in the long term than good, but the idea that we have set up an unacceptable situation destroying American manufacturing, I agree with.
Senator Merkley, thank you for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.